Oh my God. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. We're live. The boy is trying to go down for his nap, and I needed to talk about this. There's too much stuff going on for me not to go live. So, we're going to sit here. We're going to talk about the New York Jets. We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers. We're going to do all of those things because there's a lot of things that can go on from this point, right? We're getting a lot of reports. We're getting a lot of things and a lot of talks that, you know what? The conversation is going. The conversation is happening. The Pat McAfee show is going to start in 4 minutes. I'm going to have that on the other screen so that while we're live and while the boy sleeps, and I'm hoping he can sleep for some time because he needs it, we can get some news, get something exciting, get something to talk about, So if you're here, hit the like button. Thank you guys for stopping by. I'm excited to talk Jets, to talk Aaron Rodgers trade, because up until yesterday at midnight, everything that was being said, every conversation that was being had was speculation. Every single one. None of it was going to be or seemed to be anything remotely real. But now we're starting to see more and more and more pieces of information coming from more and more and more credible sources. I go back to where there's smoke, there's fire. For the 7 of you that are in here, guys, I did some changing with my settings and my mic and my audio interface and all of those things to try to give you better quality. Let me know how I sound, if I'm too low, if I'm too loud, so that I can start fiddling with it and adjusting it. I want to try to make sure I get you guys the best audio. But it is something that I have been fighting with, recently to try to get the audio. What's up, Wild Wave? Stopping in. Thank you very much. Finger Lakes. Tigo, you're working your butt off and doing well. Keep up the good work. Sounds good so far. Thank you very much, Finger Lakes. I appreciate the kind words. I keep sitting here and refreshing Twitter and just staring at it, hoping to see the news. And everything that shows up, every noop is just, I freak out. I know every notification I get from ESPN, every Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, oh man, it gets me freaking out. Zoe Royalty, hey Tigo, love the channel and thank you for your service. Thank you, Zoe, for being a subscriber and being a part of the channel. I appreciate you. Billy SVC in the house, always love chatting with Billy. The fact that the Jets haven't interviewed any other available free agent QBs and the fact that they didn't back up the Brinks truck to get Carr indicates the obvious. It's going to be Rodgers. Well, part of this is true, Billy, right? The second part of this comment is totally true. The fact that they didn't back up the Brinks trucks to really try to fight to get Derek Carr and all of that stuff is very, very telling in my opinion. I think you're right. But here's the first part. They're not allowed to talk to any free agents yet. That's the real thing. They can't have any type of communication with any free agent quarterback not named Derek Carr because technically speaking, they are still under contract with their current teams. That's how that works. So I think that there has been some internal audits, let's call it, about these other QBs, but I think plan A has always been Aaron Rodgers, and I think you're right about the whole Derek Carr things. Guys, a couple of announcements. If you don't know, this channel is now partnered with YouTube. So if you guys did want to leave a super chat, you can do that. But donations, skip the super chat. Super chats, skip the line. Donations, interrupt the stream. And all of the Talking Jets with Tigo merch is all available in that link last time I bring it up. But that is there if you guys want to help support out the channel. Dark Soldier in the house. Love this man. Finger Lakes, crazy how Geno got over 30 a year. Makes me wonder how much Jimmy G will get in Daniel Jones. Here's the thing, right? Jimmy is going to get 35. He's not going to be able to, in my opinion, ask for more than Derek Carr because he's not as good of a quarterback as Derek Carr. And with the injury concerns, you're probably looking at somewhere from $33 to $35 million for a Jimmy G, in my opinion. The other thing that you have to look at with the Danny Dimes situation is it all comes down to Dable and his belief in Daniel Jones, in my opinion. Because if he thinks that he can win games with Daniel Jones, like legitimately win games, compete for an NFC championship and a Super Bowl with Daniel Jones, part of me understands wanting to give him a relatively large contract with term. Right? It makes a lot of sense for that team because the salary cap is going to explode. And if you can, let's say, lock in Daniel Jones for 5 years at, let's say, $40 million, that's going to look like nothing 3 or 4 years from now when the salary cap explodes. Now, this is not me saying that I think Daniel Jones is worth that amount of money because I don't think it's that amount of money. That being said, if he believes that he can win with Daniel Jones, I understand a long-term contract. I'm not there yet. AR is coming to the New York Jets just days away now. I don't even think it's days away now. I think the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers have had conversations, and I think the reason that they had this conversation is primarily to have a conversation about what does Aaron Rodgers want from the New York Jets for him to be wanting to come over here. In the sense of like, Aaron Rodgers, here is our roster. This is our plan for the future. This is what we're going to do. What do you want from us to make that happen? Because a great example would be, you know what? I'm cool with the offensive tackles that you guys have. I don't want a rookie center. Like that might be something that he says, and now the Jets have to change and pivot their plans. And now, the conversation changes and he says, like, what if Aaron Rodgers says, I want you to keep Connor McGovern only if Corey Linsley isn't cut. If Corey Linsley is cut, I want him to be my center. Like, these conversations between Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, I think, are not necessarily about gauging interest. It's more about gauging what does he want from the Jets to come to New York. Who does he want? Does he really need Cobb to come to the New York Jets, or does he feel comfortable with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore and Corey Davis and Denzel Mims and Braxton Berrios? Is that a good enough wide receiver room for him? Is he cool with this offensive tackle room? Or does he really need Bakhtiari to come with him? Is he cool with us waiting for... I think that is more about the conversation about what is happening with Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's what happened. I think now what's happening is because now we're getting reports that Green Bay and the Jets are in talks for a trade. And so now what's hashing out is the compensation. Aaron Rodgers' contract is not an easy one for any team to take on. And so what's happening is the Jets are saying, you need to eat some of this contract if you want a higher pick. Here's the pick. And then the Green Bay Packers are like, let's figure out what's going to happen. So there's a lot of things that can go right. Oh, right, they can't interview. Yep, no, they can't. Zoe, if we get Rodgers, what free agents could we go after, or will they try to re-sign all of our free agents and try to run it back? No. Never are you going to see a team try to just run it back with the same team unless it's a Super Bowl winning team. It doesn't make sense. We didn't win enough games with the team that we had before. So there are a lot of free agents that we can target. Now, Zoe, I'm going to go over a couple of them, but if you're interested in more information on guys that I think that could be targets, I did release 2 videos, one about offensive free agents, one about defensive free agents that the New York Jets should be looking at targeting. But if we're looking at like the offensive side of the ball, I really think that the New York Jets are going to be in the market for an interior offensive lineman more than they are for a tackle. With Dwayne Brown coming back, I think the possibility of the New York Jets going tackle in the draft in the middle rounds, in rounds 3 or 4, makes a lot of sense. Get another Max Mitchell, because you'll have Dwayne Brown, you'll have Mekhi Becton, you'll have Max Mitchell, you'll have a rookie. Elijah Vera Tucker can still play tackle at a high level. You'll have more than enough guys to handle the depth there, and that's an option. But the other thing there is if Bakhtiari comes on with a deal, like if that's a big part of it, if Green Bay wants to move on from Bakhtiari and wants to get out from under that contract, Aaron Rodgers wants Bakhtiari to come with him, then, what's the point in going tackle? The real need is at interior offensive line. I made the observation that I would go after a guy I forget his name. He was with the he was with Cleveland last year. Give me 2 seconds. I'm pulling up his name. Ethan Pocic. That is a good example of a player that I would look at possibly bringing on. I don't think he's going to be that expensive. I think he's probably going to cost what Connor McGovern cost, maybe even a little less with what we were paying him last year. He might be $6 million-ish, $7-ish million, and that would be a really, really good option. And he's 27 years old. Thank you, Rico the Pup. So that is a way that I would look at free agency. But the other area, and this is a video that I released earlier this morning that I would be really interested in, would be what if the Jets went after a guy that maybe is currently on a roster. And the guy that came up to me is the center for the Tennessee Titans. Reports have been coming out that Tennessee might be willing to blow up their roster, Zoe. And so a guy like Ben Jones, who is 33, has 1 year left on his deal and is only worth a $6 million contract if we trade for him. We could probably get him for a really low draft pick, a 5th, a 6th, maybe even a 2024 pick for something like that. And then you can, instead of center being this massive need that you need to go get high in the draft, you can look at that and say, you know what? I feel a lot more comfortable drafting a Luke Whippler in the 2nd, insert other guy in the 3rd or the 4th to sit behind Ben Jones, and then a year from now, when he falls off the roster, we'll have a really cheap center. But that, for me, is where you go. Another guy, ironically, this on the defensive side of the ball, is Tiari Tarts, defensive tackle, formerly with the Tennessee Titans. Fletcher Cox is another guy that I would really look at bringing in. If these guys are ring chasing, I think that's where we should be looking, is the interior of the defensive line. Javon Hargrave, these kinds of guys. They might not be as expensive as maybe we think because of the fact that, you know what? There are other people, you're ring chasing at this point in your career. You're over 30. So that, for me, is a couple of the guys. We already gave Rodgers what he wanted, Hackett, and he gets out of Green Bay, which he also wants. Again, but he doesn't want to come and play, in my opinion, behind a shoddy offensive line. He's going to want to play with, better offensive line talent and things like that. But you're not wrong. The trade is already agreed upon. I don't think so. I think that the conversations are happening. If the trade has already been agreed upon, the trade would have been happened, right? Because I think Aaron Rodgers has already kind of made his decision clear. He wants to leave Green Bay, and New York is the best spot for him. Zoe, once Rodgers is a Jet, who will we play against week 1? For me, either the Patriots or the Giants, and it should be prime time. If it's Rodgers, week 1, here's the thing. I can't answer that question until we figure out what happens with Tom Brady, right? Because, and I hate saying this, but Tom Brady coming back might be a real thing. And if he comes back, an expectation that he might want to go to Miami makes sense. So week 1 versus Miami might be a thing. Who knows? There might be a thing where you put the two Big 12s against each other week 1 within the division. They're going to play each other twice. But we're going to have to see what other week 1 matchups there are, because Patrick Mahomes is, I think, still going to be a bigger name depending on what happens. But I think with Aaron Rodgers, we get at least 5 or 6 primetime games next year, at least that. And I look at the Patriots game being one of them, the Bills game, probably both Bills games are going to be primetime games, if we're being honest. One of the Miami games, the Eagles game, these are all going to be things that we're probably going to be primetime, a lot of primetime candidates for that. So essentially, we're working on parameters of the trade rather than the agreement itself. I think so, because that's what I think the biggest part of the conversation is going to be, is what is Green Bay willing to take on when it comes to the Aaron Rodgers contract, if anything, and what else do they want to package with Aaron Rodgers? And then the other thing is what are the New York Jets willing to give up? a lot of people tend to forget that Aaron Rodgers is due $58 million soon. And that's not $58 million going into escrow. So like that owners can like try to think. No. It's direct deposit. $58 million is hitting his bank account in a couple of weeks. Not every owner just has that kind of money laying around. There's a lot more with this trade that needs to be discussed, and that's why I think that the parameters of the trade haven't necessarily been agreed to, or a trade has been agreed to. I think the conversation was allowed by Green Bay to gauge interest, to let Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets talk to gauge interest to see if that is a match that they would both want, and I think that they would. Haven't heard much talk about the trade being official post June 1st due to the money that Green Bay will absorb if the trade happens before then. If that's the case, then any pick should be for 2024. No. Charles, so you're right. Here's the thing. The trade won't be done post June 1st. If the Green Bay Packers are going to do a trade, they are going to do it now. Yes, they're going to have to eat a lot of dead money, but remember that dead money really only stays on the contract on the books for 1 year. And that's why guys like Bakhtiari are probably on the move, and different situations like that, is because of the fact that, you know what, they are going to be kind of in the hole, but they can save a lot of money moving on from Aaron Rodgers and doing those things. They have $17 million worth of cap space right now. And so it's one of those, like, I think you just eat the dead money and you move on from there. You can move on from guys like Aaron Rodgers and Bakhtiari and save, a lot of money on it, and you can just eat the dead cap for 1 year, because it's not going to be a whole, it's not going to be, in my opinion, a whole oh, hey, it's whatever. You trade Aaron Rodgers and you only get a dead cap hit of $9 million. So makes a lot of sense for them to move on from him. This is according to Spotrac, by the way, so don't take my word for it. Confirm my, the Spotrac says the dead cap hit for an Aaron Rodgers trade. Yeah. They say that they take a dead cap hit. No, they save $8 million. That the dead cap hit is $40 million. So and that's still them in the positive. They still have $5 million to work with in that situation. If they were to trade, let's say, Bakhtiari, they save money, and they can restructure. They can do a lot of things to free up money, a lot of it, by cutting guys and restructuring guys. And so I think you just eat the dead cap hit, Charles. No way they let Rodgers talk with the Jets, similar to Carr and the Saints. Well, I think that there has been conversations about hey, we're interested in said guy. We're willing to trade for the guy. But I don't know if 100% it's hey, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know if the deal is in place. I think parameters and things have been talked about, saying hey, if this trade is going to go through, money is something that we're going to need to talk about. And that's coming from the Green Bay side of things. And then if you look at the Jet side of things, and then Green Bay saying okay, but we're also going to want picks coming back the other way. And so that conversation is probably had, but I don't think it's anything. It's happening. I'm going to cry, guys. I said the same thing. I was like, I need a couple of videos to go viral for me to get something, because I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm a full-time student. I need an AR-12 jersey if it happens. Why not just draft your future center? Again, you can't leave a position so important to the draft. I get that. It's happened, right? And you can look at it, but the way that I look at it is, you can't guarantee. There are only two centers, in my opinion, that are plug and play day one starters, and that's John Michael Schmitz and Luke Whippler. And I'm a fan of both of those guys. But John Michael Schmitz, if you want him, you're going to have to take him in the first round. And at 13, that's a bit rich. So you're talking about trading out of 13 to the mid-20s to get John Michael Schmitz. And I'm totally on board with that. Don't get me wrong. And then the other thing is, You have to also remember that other teams need centers too. The Houston Texans pick in front of the New York Jets. They need a center, and they might be interested in a guy like Luke Whippler. The Bears might get another second-round pick in front of the New York Jets. They need a center. There are a lot of teams that need a center, and in the second round is a great place to take one. That's why I'm scared. That's why I would maybe go sign a center and then see if you can get your guy in the draft. But that's why you would only sign a guy for like a year, maybe. I'm legit going to cry. We have a top 5 talent of all time at QB. Yeah, man. Like, if the trade goes down, yes. Let's put a break. The trade hasn't happened yet, right? So let's wait to see that. Ian Rappaport just reported Green Bay gave Jets permission to speak to Rodgers. Yep. And then I forget his name. He reported last night at midnight, and he's a very trusted source. He called that Aaron Rodgers was going back to Green Bay if they kept Cobb. So that was a big one. Thanks for the update. Rico, Aaron Rodgers has received permission to speak with the Jets. Sources confirmed some due diligence. Ian Rappaport, thanks for the tweet. Now that Rapp has reported it's true, I think it's a little odd because they already spoke last night, right? No, they spoke yesterday, and the conversation is continuing today. Remember, this conversation isn't that easy between Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. It's not, hey, do you want to be a Jet? Yeah, I want to be a Jet. That's not where Aaron Rodgers is in his career. It's more, hey, do you want to be a Jet? Yes, I would like to be a Jet if X, Y, and Z are done. And then the Jets have to come back and say, okay, maybe we can't do X, Y, and Z, but we can do L, M, N, O, N, P to try to create a facsimile of X, Y, and Z. Are you cool with that? And then he can come back and say, what if instead of doing L, M, N, O, P, we do X, Y, and then just O? And so you have to have that conversation, because Aaron Rodgers is going to want to be and have a big say in how this offense functions, and he should. It's one of the reasons Ryan from Jets Talk 24/7 mentioned this, and it's a great point, said that, you know what? Aaron Rodgers might want to go to a defensive-minded head coach because him and the offensive coordinator are going to be essentially equals at that point, and that's what he would be with Nathaniel Hackett. They would be equals. They would be running the offense together. And so we'll see. Word was Rodgers is in New York. I know they say he is dating the owner of the Milwaukee Bucks' daughter, who is from the area. He could have been in town to just hang with her, but it all makes sense now. I think that's more likely. I don't think he was in New York to meet with the Jets. I think he was in New York to be with his girlfriend, and then the conversation with the Jets happened. I don't think that they're necessarily correlated to one another, but you get the point. The salary cap is a myth, 100%. You're telling me Hackett hasn't spoken to Rodgers and his friends at Green Bay? Haha, yes, he has. He has probably spoken to his friends at Green Bay. He is not allowed to speak to Aaron Rodgers. If any of that report came out, Green Bay could absolutely annihilate the Jets with a tampering law, and Hackett is smart enough not to do that. I don't think that they've had conversations outside of friendly texts and chats, because that is allowed to happen. Like, he's like, hey, how's the wife? You know, if Aaron Rodgers texts, hey, how's the wife? Oh, things are great. How are you with your girlfriend in New York? And how was the darkness retreat? But if at any point in time, any football conversations happen, that is a serious, serious crime. And I'm not willing to lose a first-round pick just for talking to a guy that we're probably going to get anyway. Could Elijah Moore be involved in the trade? Why would Aaron Rodgers let Elijah Moore be involved in the trade? That's the real thing. And then the other thing is why would Elijah Moore want to be traded to Green Bay? Remember that Elijah Moore's problem was with his utilization and how the quarterback position was being played. You're telling me that if Aaron Rodgers is going to come to New York, he's still going to be upset? And with Nathaniel Hackett, who's going to utilize him better? Again, there are a lot of reasons to go and have these conversations, but people are overvaluing Aaron Rodgers in this trade conversation, in my opinion. If it's going to be a trade straight up just for Aaron Rodgers and a pick right now, no money being exchanged, nothing like that is happening, nothing. But if that's just the trade, it's probably just a third-round pick. That 100%. Maybe a conditional 2024 pick, but as of right now, it's probably a third, maybe a second at the most. And the real reasons that that's the case is because of the fact that, you know what? Aaron Rodgers' contract is not in a good spot. They're not going to keep a $50 million quarterback on the bench, and the conversation and all that stuff hasn't boded well for everybody. F16 Jet with a super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat. Keep up the good work, man. Legit content. Thank you very, very much, F16 Jet Fuel. I appreciate it. Then why not just re-sign McGovern on a 1-year deal? Because McGovern isn't going to want a 1-year deal. McGovern is the McGovern is like the guy when it comes to the free agents and like free agent centers. He's going to want a long extension. And the way that I look at it is, why would he sign a 1-year deal when some team is going to be willing to give him $13-14 million for 3 or 4 years? Like, look at the Texans. The Texans might give him that much money. They have the money. They need the center. And so that's the thing. McGovern, it's not a matter. I would absolutely sign McGovern to a 1-year deal. He wouldn't take it. We tend to forget that the player has a say in the contract and what he wants to do as well. Does JD demand a 2-year commitment from Rodgers? I don't know if you can demand a commitment from Rodgers, right? Because like he is Aaron Rodgers, but maybe like that's a real thing. Like maybe you have that conversation and maybe you say, you know what? That's a guy that I look at. That's a guy that I say, maybe that happens. Zoe, I'm sorry I skipped your chat. Thoughts on getting B-Hop in the event we let Corey Davis go? I'm not interested in it at all. I'm assuming here we meant D-Hop and like DeAndre Hopkins in this conversation. And here's why, right? DeAndre Hopkins' contract is abysmal. It's one of the worst contracts possible. And there's that. And then the other thing that you got to look at with the DeAndre Hopkins, because he would be a $20 million cap hit for the Jets and then a $15 million cap hit next year. And my thing is, we don't need a wide receiver 1 necessarily. We have Garrett Wilson. We don't necessarily need a wide receiver 2. I really believe in Elijah Moore. And Corey Davis, I think, is probably going to be on this team moving forward. Like, it makes too much sense for him not to. He is a $10 million cap hit. Guys, that's an insanely good team-friendly contract. It makes a little bit too much sense for the New York Jets to keep him around, in my opinion, when it comes to the wide receiver. Now, Rico brings up the guy that I was going to mention, and that is the Bucs are nearly $60 million over the cap. You think they try to unload Evans for some draft capital, and if so, what do you think it would take? This is the guy that I look at and I go, this makes a lot of sense. This is a guy like that I would be more interested in if we were to cut Corey Davis, right? Because Corey Davis is a $10 million cap hit, whereas in Mike Evans would be in that similar range for cap hit. And I don't think it costs that much to trade hit for him. You're looking at maybe a third, maybe a fourth. And the reason I think that is because he is on the wrong side of 30. He's 30 years old. He's only got 1 year left on his deal. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in cap hell. And they can save, I believe they can save like a couple $1 million by doing this. So there is a couple of options there, and I really do like the wide receiver options when it comes to this kind of conversation with the wide receiver. To play with Aaron Rodgers, McGovern will take a 1-year deal. I don't think so. Like McGovern hasn't gotten paid yet. That's the thing. He hasn't gotten his payday, and he is the belle of the ball this free agency period. If he were to theoretically take a 1-year deal to stay with the Jets, which isn't smart business from him, from his side of the ball, right? If he were to take a 1-year deal to be with the Jets, the thing that we have to remember is that next year's free agency class at center is much better than this year's free agency class at center. And he isn't going to be the belle of the ball next year. He is this year. He is by far and away the best center available this year. That is assuming Corey Linsley doesn't get cut. And so he is 30 years old. He's going to want to get the bag. And that's what I assume happens is that, is in my opinion, is going to be he's going to chase the bag. I think Connor McGovern ends up in Houston. It seems like a team that's going to be more than willing to sign for like $14 or $15 million. So do the fans complain if they sign McGovern to another 3-year deal? Well, what's the number, Dave? That's a big question here. What's the number that he's signing at? Because it matters. Because like if you're telling me that we can get McGovern back on the New York Jets at $9 million again, I'm on board 100%. Bring him back for the next 3 years. And then you draft someone in the draft to be his replacement, right? Like I'm totally cool with that. And then after 2 years, you move on from him. And but like what happens if he's asking for 13? What happens if he's asking for 15? That's a different conversation. According to Spotrac, his estimated market value is $12.5 million. That's a lot of money, and the New York Jets just don't have the space to do that. And then when you look at that there are teams like the Texans that exist that are running us the same exact scheme that we're running, and they're going to have a rookie quarterback. They're going to want a veteran center to be able to shift protection and do those things. I think they'd be willing to overpay for Connor McGovern for 3 years at $13-14 million. And if the Jets can only match it for 3 years at $9 million, if I'm Connor McGovern, I maybe go to the Texans. We'll see. Again, free agency is going to start real soon. We'll see what's going to happen. And the Saints, who have no money, just signed. Dude, the salary cap is fake. Right? Salary cap is absolutely... This is one of the things that I'm actually super interested to see is how in the hell are they going to fix this cap? Because they're now like $50 million over the cap. And I don't see where or how they're going to be able to fix or get under the cap. Right? Like, okay, let's just do it really quick. You restructure Marshawn Lattimore. You restructure Andreas Pete. You restructure Alvin Kamara. You restructure Michael Thomas. It doesn't do anything if you restructure Ryan Ramczyk or Demario Davis. Okay, and then you cut Jameis Winston, of course. Oh my gosh, this is so, like, I honestly have no idea how you do this. Like, their contracts are just so bad. Doesn't do anything. That doesn't help at all. Oh, can't cut Derek Carr. What's that doing? Can't cut Taysom Hill. Okay, for them to get over the cap right now, they need to restructure, and this is just $1 million over the cap. They need to restructure Marshawn Lattimore, Andreas Pete, Alvin Kamara, and then release Jameis Winston and James Hurst. Like, dude, they're so over the cap. I don't know how they're going to field a team. Like, this is where I never understood Derek Carr wanting to go to the Saints. They're not going to be able to put up a team that's going to be good around him at all. Like, at all. That made no sense to me. I'm drafting a center. We can use the money elsewhere. McGovern is solid, but it isn't worth that type of money. I agree. Now, I would bring in a free agent center at a much cheaper value and then also draft a center and kind of double dip at the position. That would be my ideal scenario and what I would want to do in this situation. But yeah, I'm more on board with it. Thanks, McGovern, but we're going to bring in a new guy. A guy who hopefully isn't going to be worth $9 million. And I look at a guy like a Pocic, like a thing like that. They play just as good as McGovern last year, and they're going to be a lot cheaper. Okay, then the Jets can re-sign McGovern, and all those players will be happy about that. Well, we'll see. Again, I'm not the biggest McGovern fan just because, like, I'm not anti-McGovern, but I'm not pro-McGovern either. Like, I would much rather go get a cheaper option at center who we know is going to play just as well, and then draft a guy to be that guy's replacement, and then save the $5 million that you would if you brought him back. McGovern is going to be 30 before the 2023 season. This is realistically his last chance to get a big payday. I can't blame him if he goes somewhere else for the money. Me neither. And I think that's what he does. The Saints cap philosophy is to just kick the can down the road until they have to let good players walk. It might be this year. It might be this year where they just eat it. What's the penalty for going over the cap? Does anybody know? Like, what if they just say, screw it, we're $24 million over the cap? Like, what does the NFL do in that case? I'm curious. Will we see Rucker utilized more in this offense? I'm excited with all of our weapons in the wide receiver and running back and tight end and AR under center. The sky's the limit if we stay healthy. The if we stay healthy is a very, 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 very important part of that, Zoe, obviously. But I will say this. Jeremy Ruckert is going to see a lot more utilization for a couple of reasons. One, this is going to be his second year in the system. He's going to feel a lot more comfortable in the system. And so I think you're going to see a much more utilization of not just Ruckert, but all of our tight ends. And the other reason for that is Nathaniel Hackett. Nathaniel Hackett loves to use his tight ends. If we look at utilization charts of Nathaniel Hackett versus Mike LaFleur versus Kyle Shanahan versus other guys who run this system, Nathaniel Hackett, like players whose stock or positions whose stock went up, tight ends and running backs, with Nathaniel Hackett switching from Mike LaFleur. Our running backs are going to get a lot more utilization, and so will our tight ends, not just in the passing game, but also in the receiving game. And so we're going to see that for both positions, the running back and the tight end. But where are we going to see a fall off in utilization is in the slot. Nathaniel Hackett likes running 2 tight end sets a lot, and he doesn't necessarily run 3 wide receiver sets a lot. He tends to flex or motion tight ends into the slot a lot more than just playing a true slot guy. And with that being said, again, you expect that the slot utilization goes down. That is why I think that the New York Jets look at Elijah Moore as an outside receiver, not as a slot receiver. Elijah Moore had his best success year 1, obviously he's going into year 3, when he was played primarily on the outside. Now, while his skill set does absolutely lend to being used in the slot, and he can be an elite slot guy, I think the Jets, I think the Hackett, I think Elijah looks at himself as an outside guy, and within good reason. He was getting open very, very consistently. We just weren't getting the ball to him because of our absolutely horrendous quarterback play. So a couple of things that you look at there. Rico the Pup. Penalties for violating or circumventing the cap regulation include fines up to $5 million for each violation, cancellation of contracts, and or loss of draft picks per Google. Thank you, Rico. That's interesting. They can't afford to lose the draft picks, right? Like, that's a real thing. It's oh man, I don't know. It's weird to see what's gonna happen here. If they draft another tight end, do you see the Jets cutting Conklin or Uzomah? I like Darnell from Georgia. Him and Ruckert could be the future. I don't see the Jets drafting a tight end. I don't see where we're going to be able to fit all of that in and under the salary cap. Not the salary cap. Like, there are other I said it wrong. I'm sorry. I got distracted. There are other positions that are more valuable in the draft. That's why, like, going offensive lineman makes a lot more sense. We need an offensive lineman. We need an offensive center. We need an interior defensive lineman. We are not in a position to start taking luxuries. We have CJ Uzomah. We have Tyler Conklin. We have Jeremy Ruckert. We have Kenny Yeboah. These guys are all fantastic and much better than a lot of people think. They were misutilized under Mike LaFleur. So the trading for using a draft pick on a Darnell from Georgia doesn't make sense because, like, it's just too high of a draft pick, in my opinion. Like, if you're saying we take a tight end in the 6th round, cool, like, whatever. But even then, I would look at that. I was like, there are other positions that we need more. I would take a safety over a tight end right now. I would take a a linebacker over a tight end right now. I would take an edge rusher over a tight end right now. Interior defensive lineman over a tight end right now. So that's the way that I look at it. We won't know what they need until after the free agent period, so we really don't know the needs yet. Absolutely. And like my thing is if one of these tight ends were going to get cut, we would have done it already. Joe Douglas doesn't seem like the guy who's going to hold on to a guy until after the draft. He would have cut a tight end by now. Like if Conklin or Uzama were going to be off the team, we would have cut them already. And they would have been informed, and they would have done all that stuff. But the other thing that you got to look at is getting out from underneath those contracts, not as easy as a lot of people expect. The outs on those contracts are next year after they're on the team. So I look at the CJ Uzama and the Tyler Conklin, and like if we cut CJ Uzama, it's an $11 million cap hit. It costs more money to cut him than it is to pay him. And then you only save a little under $1 million for cutting Tyler Conklin. Again, it just doesn't make sense when you look at that situation. So I would keep both of these guys around for the long term there. Guys, I'm going to end the stream there. I'm going to go hang out at Jets Talk 24/7 just because the baby's sleeping and I don't want to be live when he goes to sleep and all of that stuff. So for me, that's the conversation. Guys, thank you so much for stopping by. F16 Jet Fuel, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Guys, if you haven't already, hit the sub button. If you haven't already, hit the like button. Thanks for being a part of the Talking Just with Tico family. And last but not least, go